welcome to episode 132. Today we've got our good friend Chris Barker. If you're a longtime listener, you know that he's been on the show a whole bunch of times. And he's been a good friend of ours and a good friend of the show. I might as well throw in a shameless plug for Faces of Wildlife, is another podcast I did. And I had an awesome time with Chris. You can check out episode 2. Him and I got out for a hike together, recorded an episode. And it's one of my favorite episodes we did for that series. So head over to Faces of Wildlife. You can listen to that one and get to know Chris even more. But in this episode, Chris is going to give you a bit of an update on what he's been up to in 2020 and all this COVID craziness. And Garrett seized on the opportunity to talk about horses. And Chris gives an update on everything that the Wild Sheep Society of BC has been up to. So I hope you guys enjoy this episode. With sheep in mind, I thought I'd share something. I was on a road trip yesterday. I headed down to Oliver with my girlfriend and her family. And if any of you have traveled from Kelowna to Penticton down to Oliver, you'll know that there's mountain goats and sheep as you get further south. And man, did we see a ton of them, which was pretty cool to see. You can often see them right off the highway, but I decided to take a couple of back roads and we found even more than I can even count. So it's very fun for me to share that experience of viewing sheep with people I love. And it's also very cool to know why those sheep are there. And it's because of the help of the Wild Sheep Society of BC and the Wild Sheep Foundation. So it's a good reminder that we need to donate and become members of these groups so that future generations can enjoy them the same way we are today. So consider becoming a member. But that's enough. Let's get into this episode. Sit back, relax, crack an ice cold beer, and enjoy episode 132 with our good friend Chris Barker.
Chris, how's it going?
Good. Glad to be back and talk to you fellas again.
Yeah, it's good to have you on. I think you and Garrett, we were just talking, haven't technically met, so we did a little bit of an intro a few minutes ago. I know you guys have a lot in common, so I'm stoked to have you guys chat as well.
Yeah, no, Chris, I've been hearing you on the podcast and other podcasts, so it's good to finally meet.
Yeah, no, for sure. I haven't actually done one for since COVID hit, I think. I'm not sure what happened there, but it's definitely be a pleasure to back on with you guys and a pleasure to meet you as well, Garrett. So.
For sure. I was trying to remember the last time that we had you on the podcast, Chris. I think it was just you and I that did the last one. Mike was out of the picture that day. I think he must have been working or something, but yeah, it's good to have you back. Everybody has, we all have a beverage.
I had one before I got on, so
nice.
My apologies there.
I've got a Phillips Blue Buck on tap today, and I chose this one because Chris, you and I have also had a business meeting at Phillips too, so I would call it a business meeting.
Yep. That's actually what I actually did pick up some Phillips, and I picked another one up tap tonight, and then I got into it last night. It's some 49th Parallel. It's Dirty Filthy IPA, and I think it's got a picture of a pink pig on it. So
nice.
I thought it was a little too early to break into the Scotch on a Thursday night, so I left all the Scotch on the shelf.
Oh, you're past hump day. Should be okay. I see Garrett's got his Cab Sab there, signature.
Signature, yeah. That is a must at the end of the day.
Yeah,
nice.
Definitely.
A Scotch drinker too. I love drinking Scotch.
Yeah, I try to build up a collection so when anybody actually can get over and visit now, that at least is a good selection. So
yeah,
I usually get over to Kyle Stelter's house there, past president of the Sheep Society, and he usually has a good selection, and he always likes to overserve me. So,
oh, that's that's a good friend right there.
But you pay for it the next day.
Yeah.
Hey, Chris, just in case there's newer listeners that don't know who you are, the one title I've heard folks call you is kind of like the sheep mafia boss, as in, the very involved in Wild Sheep Society BC, Wild Sheep Foundation, all the organizations. So, what's the title as of today? Because I know it changes.
Yeah, I guess if brief history, was on the board of Wild Sheep Foundation for 6 years. WSF US National. Been involved with the Wild Sheep Society BC for over 20 plus years.
Yep.
President, treasurer, director. So current title is Wild Sheep Society BC Projects Chair.
Nice. So you're kind of leading that committee.
Yeah. So I'm the committee chair. Robin Rutledge, one of the directors. I think Robin's our secretary.
Yep.
He's our co-chair for our projects committee, and we've probably got over half the board on that committee from WSSBC. So very involved committee. And as we get into projects and that conversation, it'll kind of get on why it's such a big item for what we're doing and where we're going. But
for sure, yeah, and we definitely want to get into that, a bit of a update on kind of what's been happening with WSSBC. Because we haven't talked really through 2020, and maybe a little bit of what, if there are any silver linings through all of this. But I guess first of all, just curious kind of what you've been up to 2020 and if you've been able to get out hunting for yourself for a change. I know you don't generally have a lot of time for that, but.
Well, that was once I came off the board of WSF, it did free up a bit of time to get out in the field a bit. So that was a bit of a blessing. But, if anything, I guess has come out of COVID that's been decent is all the kids kind of came back home. So Jacob was in Amsterdam, Cam was in Washington State. And when COVID hit, they all came home. So this spring, it was really nice. They hadn't really been hunting out with me for a long time. So I just said, okay, boys, we're going bear hunting. And we got out about 6-7 times this spring and got a couple overnight trips in, some 4-buying. And I think the last trip out, Jacob missed a really good black bear.
Oh, yeah.
At about 70 yards. So he's he's still stewing over that one. So I said, yeah, well, that's what builds the passion. So
yeah.
So he's pretty excited. He wants to get out this spring again. And I know we were chatting earlier in the year about if you guys do come down, we'll definitely do a weekend bear hunt for sure.
Definitely.
So we were doing that in the spring, and then planned a sheep hunting trip with my buddy Mike Southern. So we got a 2-week backpack trip in the Cassiar side, and that was really good. Saw lots of sheep. Just nothing really turned our fancy, and younger rams, lots of younger rams and stuff. So awesome. That was good. And then I got drawn for an LEH for moose up in the McBride area. So I was up hunting moose in there, but as everybody well knows, this year moose hunting really sucked the big one.
Yeah, I think that's been a bit of a trend. I guess it depends what area, but we went up. Where were we? We were up near Quesnel a couple of years ago, and we didn't have much luck either.
Yeah, like I had one bull like 25 yards away. I could hear him in the swamp. He was grunting, and I was on the other side of the trees. And just as I was trying to get through the trees, and just as he started grunting and I was getting close, somebody else fired a shot and shot another moose about like a mile away. So he kind of just headed out the swamp, the back end, and that was it. I don't even think we saw him. I just heard him.
Nice.
So it's all part of the adventure, right?
Yeah, you never know what's going to happen.
Yeah. So it was a good, decent year for getting out and actually enjoying BC for a change.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, it sounds like you were busy. Was that sheep hunt a rifle or bow hunt?
I packed my bow.
Nice.
Yeah. Didn't drop back, but we got some cool pictures, and like I said, we saw lots of rams, so it was cool.
Awesome.
Some new country, so it was a bit of an investigative trip as well.
Yeah, that's pretty much what all of ours are. Hey, Garrett.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, but I love getting out there. It's fun.
Yeah.
That's how I kind of started off to just getting out and just, I was fortunate there was a fair bit of game around the interior at that time, so it feel the passion even more. And then we got going north, and anyways, that's a whole nother chapter we can dive into later if we have time.
Yeah.
So what age were you when you decided to start going north and chasing thinhorn?
I'll abbreviate the story a bit. It was a good friend of ours that lives in Dawson Creek, Doug Field, and all of our friends were going to the Kootenays and hunting elk, and he said, why don't you come up here and hunt moose? So me and my friend Rod Ellis, I've been hunting together with him for over 20 years as well, and said, yeah, we'll go up and visit Doug. And we did about 4 or 5 years of just moose hunts around Dawson Creek. And then we just started talking about horseback trips and sheep hunts. And so it was probably 24-ish, 25-ish on the first sheep hunt.
So,
and I was...
At the time, did you own horses, or was that something you were thinking of getting into?
It was on our radar.
That's good. Yeah.
So, like I said, that's that whole other piece. Like I said, if we dive into that stuff, but yeah, I was, we were fortunate enough. They say it'll take you, for the age of your ram you shoot, it'll take you that many years of sheep hunting before you shoot that ram. Mm-hmm. If it's 8 years, an 8-year-old ram kind of thing. The first ram I shot was 13 years old, and I didn't hunt 13 years before I shot.
That's unreal.
So I've been really fortunate over the years, just hunting and getting out in the field. So
yeah, that's great. So did you, were you guys inspired to get horses because of the moose part of it, or was it the sheep part of it?
It was just the adventure there. I think it was that romance to actually just load up the horses, pack train in, moose, elk, sheep, whatever was there. We pretty well go over and do whatever we wanted to do for 2.5 weeks, right?
Mm-hmm. And that's what I mentioned to Kelly when I was a kid. That's what hooked me, is stepping out of the wall tent and seeing the horses and the Rockies and the snow and having the elk up in the meat pole and all that. Like the whole picture, like you're saying. That's what hooked me right there.
Yeah, there was something about them, like I said, the mountains. And I think, once you get that sheep bug, it is a disease, so just be prepared. I know Kelly's he's been on a sheep hunt, so he's already halfway in now. So
yeah,
there's no turning back.
Yeah, well, and the one sheep hunt that I went on, Garrett was there, Mike was there, and that was a blast. And we had a lot of learnings and adventure there, and then of course we had the second one booked, which I wasn't a part of, but Mike and Garrett were on that hunt, so they had the whole fly-in experience. But I think there's definitely going to be some more in the future, and Garrett and I have talked a little bit about it's probably not going to be 2021. There's obviously a lot of commitments in terms of kids, and of course Garrett, he's loading up the property with farm animals. Not farm animals, but horses and dogs and hunting animals, I should say.
Yeah, horses and hounds.
Yeah, exactly. So I know you guys will, there's probably a lot that you could take offline at some point too.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. I mean, when you got into the horse part of it, how many horses did you guys start out with?
So when we started off doing the moose hunt. So when Doug he was pretty good. He goes, you guys aren't getting any easy moose. So we were hunting out of tree stands, and the first time we went up, we both shot a moose. And he goes, well, we're going to bring that. He only had the one horse at the time. So he said, we can put X amount on the horse. The rest of it, you guys are backpacking out. So we backpacked part of it out. And then as we started doing more and more trips, he had a couple of horses. So that got us into the horse thing, more just on the packing out side of things. Mm-hmm. And by the time we got into probably our third trip up there, we said, we want to do a horse trip into the mountains. So when we started having that conversation with Doug, and so it's going to take this many horses. So I think we bought 4 or 5 of our own, and then we board a few for those first trips. So by the time, we started off with 1 or 2, but by the time we were done, we were taking 12 horses, and so 3 of us, we'd have 12 horses.
Oh, wow. That's a workout.
Yeah. So we had 3 saddle horses, and the rest were pack horses.
Wow. So when you first started out, were you guys, you guys must have been tossing around the topic, like, okay, we're going to bring this thing in the backcountry. How are we going to feed this animal?
So fortunately, Doug had done a couple of trips, so we just there's going to be grass in the mountains. So we just relied on having the grass in there. Because his horses lived up north, they were pretty well fat and happy all year. So the first week they were in a huge weight loss program, and then the second week they got toughened up, and they held on. And by the time we came out of the mountains, they were in good shape. They weren't starving, but if you took them in thin, then you'd come out, they'd be a bone rack. So
Okay.
they definitely go through that thing. So we didn't pack feed for our horses. We'd take grain in once in a while, but it wasn't consistent. But they just laid around all summer and got fat.
So did you guys have to teach them how to picket or hobble or anything like that, or high line, or would you guys turn them out at night, or
the whole works?
the whole works? Did you start from scratch and go through the whole?
So again, as anything, when you get into it, you look at it and you go, okay, well, we need to do this. We need to do this. So the first few years we would tie up our horses at night, and then it took us a while before we'd actually hobble them. And then depending what was going on. So what we'd find is that because we'd have a different group of horses, we'd always have kind of the same lead group of horses. So we always made sure those horses were tied up in the evening.
Okay.
If we were having issues with buffalo or bears, then they all got tied up. There was a couple of spots where we were actually camping. There was a corral, so we could put them in the corral at night. So they didn't have food overnight. But that's it. First thing in the morning, we get up, horses get out, we toss them, we picket a couple, hobble a couple, some roam free, and then just let them graze till about lunchtime. So we were kind of opposite. We never really got up and did that early morning hunt. We'd get the horses out, have our breakfast, let them feed, and then the ones that are saddle horses, they'd be eating all day long. And then the other ones, we'd kind of leave them picketed till we got back. But we'd leave around noon, but we wouldn't get back till probably midnight, between 10 and midnight most nights. So we did a lot of riding in the dark as well. So we just ended up with the evening hunt.
So that sounds like an important aspect that they should learn before you go in the backcountry, is to tie up, picket, and hobble.
Yeah, and you're still going to have wrecks and rodeos.
Yeah, that's what people keep telling me. But that's good to know.
Especially with me around.
Yeah, that's with Kelly. Yeah. Anyway, like it seems like we get a little nice weather and the horses get a little bit more energy and they start ripping around. I'm like, oh, yeah, Kelly can ride that one there.
I'm looking forward to it. I'm going to buy a helmet.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the first trip we went in, the first few years we went in, we had way too much gear.
Okay.
Like we didn't know what we always think you need more, right? So our top packs were probably 2 feet on top of the panniers, like just overburdened. And we kind of had a standing joke as we were going in. There was a creek that we had to go through. And we'd say, if we can get to that creek without a rodeo, we're doing good. And first 3 years, we always have a rodeo. And I think the year we made it past the creek, we got out of the creek, came up the creek out of the hill, and it was on a road, right? This is not a trail. This was a Forest Service road that was just a beat to shit.
Okay.
And we got out of the creek, and then all of them blew up, and there was shit everywhere. So yeah, we had the green part where we had too much gear and shit exploding off the horses.
Okay, that's good, because that's the one thing I've been tossing back and forth. I keep thinking, okay, if me and Kelly are going to go, should I just pack them? Like get the whole breast collar and breech in and all that and use like a sawbuck or a decker and then put panniers? Or should I just go get a Western saddle and then get those saddle panniers that you can lace over and then put a breeching on it? Just because I've heard guys say, well, the saddle will slide up. You don't, like, you know what I mean? Does the horse require that protection of using a pack saddle, or can you get away with it with just a regular saddle?
I think if you're going to get away with a regular saddle, it really comes down to how many horses you really have, right? So if you've only got, 2 of you going in and you've got one pack horse, pack some saddle bags for your saddle horses.
Okay.
The saddle panniers. But that one horse that's going to have the load on him, you want to make sure you've got the proper pack saddle, the breeching, the breast collar on them.
Okay. For safety reasons, right?
Well, it'll move around and your loads will shift. But if you're going up any hills, that britchen's not sliding up on the horse's shoulder, because as soon as that pack saddle hits him in a funny spot, that's when they start to duck.
Okay. And then a lash rope too, right? I'll have that.
And then you're diamond.
Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect. Good to know. Yeah, I think I keep thinking of this scenario like we'd start off small with not a lot. That way we can manage everything. So in terms of getting him into the mountains, I'd be like, well, maybe we'll just hit some road closures first. So we're not going, maybe an overnighter just to get the feel for it. And the whole feed thing, like we talked about, like I know some guys will pack in pellets, and some places have restrictions, right? You have to have like weed free feed.
Yeah.
So learning that, and then where water is and all that stuff. So you guys must have researched that too. Like you must have been close to water. And
we were always on a river or a creek. So we like the main trails are running. So most of the main game trails are running up a river. So we'd always camp by water anyway, just for ourselves on the horses.
Okay.
So we were always by a water source. So, and up north you can pick, whether it's the Bessa, the Halfway, the Kachika, the Muskwa, Tetsa, and any of those areas, you're always going to be by water.
Right.
So we never really got concerned about water. And usually where those rivers were, there's usually good feed.
Perfect. Okay, yes. That's good. Good to know.
We're going to have to put out a glossary with this episode, guys. Schedule of definitions.
Yeah, I know. I didn't want to dabble in, like, I'm trying to pick the top ones to ask Chris here, but I think that was that one there with the pack saddle, the panniers. Mm-hmm. Have you guys ran those saddle panniers before, Chris?
Actually, I don't even think we ever did bother taking them. There was one trip where we're diverting off of where we're going here, but we had our main camp, and there was Doug's dad and another guy were in camp. So they stayed down in the main camp and horses, and we took 3 saddle horses and 1 pack horse. And all we did was have some tent and food, and we rode right to the head of this valley. And, just as we kind of cresting up there, Doug goes, we don't want to be shooting a moose up here. And we're sitting there, and all of a sudden this bull moose comes running down. He goes right down to the creek. And we're looking at him. I go, I'm pretty sure I can sneak up on it, Doug. And he goes, yeah, I know you can. And this is my first archery moose, right? And we were all bow hunting. So I snuck in on this moose, and I ended up arrowing it. And he had this big black horse called Jigger, and he was a bit of an ornery bugger, but he was as tough as nails. And we put on him. I think he had the backs, had the hindquarters, front quarters. We may have deboned a bit of it. The back straps were on a saddle, because I remember like Doug and Rod had meat tied off their saddle horn in a game bag.
Oh, okay.
And then I had a backpack on with the horns in the backpack, riding the horse back to camp.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, those pack saddles would have been good there for the saddle bags there. But yeah, we never did end up using them, and we just started to accumulate more and more gear as we went along. So like we implemented a rule. Doug was a bit Western when he was younger, and he always used to keep shooting till the animal went down. And when he started to do that, it wrecked meat. So we implemented this rule that if you wreck meat, you had to buy tack. So if you wrecked a shoulder, a back strap, if you lost any meat at all, you had to buy tarps, panniers, saddles, rigging, ropes, hitches, whatever it was. So that's how we accumulated that gear. But it got to the point where I remember Doug saying, no, he's not quite right. I'm not going to shoot him there yet. He's not in the right angle.
And you guys are like, come on, we need some more gear. Shoot him.
Yeah. So it got to the point where we were looking at our shop, so we didn't have to buy gear.
When you guys went in, were you guys mounting loads, or were you just using panniers?
We always used panniers, so we never did the soft bags and then hitched them that way. But the original, when we first started going in, we had the wooden pack saddles with the whole basket hitch on the panniers.
Okay. Yeah.
And then when the Pocac panniers came out with the rope on them, you just throw them over, right? They were so much quicker. So I think I built enough panniers for 6 horses originally out of wood and fiberglass.
Oh wow.
So being a carpenter, it was just something I did, had them all painted, and then when we went to the bush, they were all ready to go, and then Pokiak came out the plastic, so they kind of went the wayside.
Oh, so you had the solid panniers. Did you ever try using that tough duck or iron cloth pannier? You seen that stuff? It's like made out of like rock quarry belting. They say it's like impervious to like blood and all that, compared to like canvas where you got to wash it and it'll rot and all that stuff.
Yeah.
You guys just went always hard panniers?
We just always went the hard plastic panniers and the plywood and the fiberglass on them.
Oh, cool. Okay. Interesting. Nice.
Yeah. And then just a canvas top pack, right? So once you get your gear on, and then throw your canvas top pack on top of that.
Yeah. And I'd imagine those things that they would take a beating too going through the brush. They probably stood up.
Yeah, no, everything held up really well, both styles. So
Moose, you guys would debone it right down, or we just keep the quarters and then put them in the...
No, we can't. We left the bone in because, again, when you debone it, everything starts to skin up, so you end up losing more meat. So if you've got enough horses and you can keep the bone in, then you'll get more meat at the end of the trip. So we'd break it off at the knuckle, take the bit of the calf front piece off the lower leg, and that'd be hamburger. But then we'd keep from the knee or the hock at the back there, and then we'd take that whole quarter and stuff it in. So one moose quarter would fit in one pannier. So you could get a hinds and on one horse, the front's on another horse, and then usually the third horse would have the back straps and horns, kind of thing.
Geez, those must have been some adventures.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If you could get horses again, what would be another hunt you'd want to do?
I'd probably just go back and do what we were doing.
Yeah?
It's just, I miss it. All three of us have actually talked about redoing it, but we've got to get some horses, and whether our bodies are tough enough to cowboy up for the rodeo and break some new horses again.
Oh yeah. Would you guys shoe all your horses before you went in there?
Yeah, everything was shoed before we went in.
Okay, so the horses I have out right now, they have no shoes on them. They're just barefoot.
And
like
Doug ran them all summer barefoot, and then when we came to the fall, he'd trim them up and then shoe them.
Yeah, so that's what I've heard, and I wanted to ask you about it. So that is a thing. Then you can just throw the shoes on before you go hunting, and then pull them off when you're done.
Yeah, just make sure their feet are in good shape through the summer and keep them trimmed up. And then, we just throw them on when we go. And when we got back, we'd take the shoes off.
Oh, that's great. This is a wealth of information. It's good.
Kick them out for the winter.
Yeah, obviously you guys are going to have to exchange numbers and
no kidding.
Set up some meetings. That's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm thinking for me and Kelly, it might be even just wise to start packing them first and then just lean them in there. I mean, our camp's going to be a little more luxurious. That's what I can see as a perk. And then maybe we won't have to put these animals on our back if we are successful coming out and start.
And you can walk as quick as a horse. I mean, we used to ride going in, we'd ride in because the horses are pretty soft. We'd take it fairly easy on them, but coming out, we'd ride the whole day out. So there were some days we'd ride 12 hours and there's no.
Oh, wow.
And, walking out, you just jump off and walk for a bit, but you can walk as fast as a horse almost on a trail anyway.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, where I live right now, we were discussing in the Kootenays, we have a lot of road closures down here. So it might be, I thinking that might be a good way to get in at it at the start. And we do have, I know, we do have sheep down here too. So we were tossing that topic around, maybe seeing how we could bring the horses into the mix and hunt sheep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, they're there, that's for sure. I think, horses and sheep, you've got to kind of figure out where they are, and then you've got to be able to get back to your horses. And whereas if you're on that true sheep backpack hunt, you're just going. So if you see a ram on the next mountain, you're going. Whereas if you see that ram on the one mountain that you're on, that's great. But if not, you're going to come back to the horses and make sure that they're okay. They're looked after and get back to your camp. So it kind of limits you in the sense that you've got to be back. So you're limited to kind of day hunts. Whereas if you're backpacking, you keep going if you want, right?
Just running and gunning. Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah. Yeah.
So it's just different style of hunting and what you're into, right?
I'm sure. What you said there, you nailed it. That's exactly, I like the whole entire experience of the hunt. I if I don't harvest something, I'm not exactly saying, well, you know what I mean? It's not going to really weigh me down at all, but everything put together, even the preparation that me, Mike, and Kelly would do beforehand, all that stuff combined together, I find like I love it all. Like that's the best part.
Yeah. I just like getting out there. It's funny, I got out, we were on that moose hunt and we were on the Fraser River and we're going up and down and we'd pull into a bench and we'd walk around looking for moose and we found this old truck and one thing and then there's this burned out stump and you could, when we're walking on moose trails, there's moose tracks. It's like, where's the moose? But oh, look at this kind of thing, right? It's that whole picture put together.
Yeah.
And this year I wasn't even worried about if I shot anything. It's as weird as that was, but
Yeah. That's awesome.
But, like I said, I've been fortunate enough. I was pretty crazy. I did a lot of hunting when I was younger. So
Yeah, it's good. I'm trying to find the balance, and I'm sure Kelly is too now with our kids being so young and everything. So the time I do get out and balance it with family is, it's all there and trying to get the kids into it. And now, bringing them up through the hunting and exposing them to them. Like you're saying, your kids are coming back and the bear hunt and getting excited. Like it's getting me excited to get out and hunt bears.
yeah. Well, the funny part is when my kids were growing up, they all played sports. So Jacob was playing hockey, Campbell played hockey, and then they did lacrosse. Well, hockey started when I went in September.
Oh,
and
yeah.
School started. So it was like beginning of September, I was gone for 2.5 weeks. Maybe I wasn't too popular at home, but I wouldn't trade that for anything, right? We were lucky enough to come back with meat every time. So my kids actually grew up on moose meat and elk meat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
They didn't know anything different.
Yeah, that's perfect. Yeah, I mean, Garrett has mentioned, going east and potentially looking for sheep there. So that's definitely something, with more commitments at home and, kind of the difficulty, at least at this point in our lives, of maybe going up north as a regular thing. If that becomes less common, then, we may still kind of, look east and try to look for some sheep there too.
And you've got the elk. So if you can combine it, like or harvest an elk and focus on sheep, or it depends what you run into.
Yeah,
it's almost like your trip can take a turn left or right depending what jumps out in front of you.
Yeah, life's rough when you can combine a sheep hunt and an elk hunt
and a goat hunt and a moose hunt
and a goat hunt
and a mule deer and a bear.
Yeah,
spoiled.
Hey, Chris, just shifting gears a little bit. Garrett and I talked about Sheep Week. Did a bit of a recap on it last episode. Did you pop on to the virtual show there? What was your thoughts on it?
Definitely different. I think new experience. I mean, obviously with work, your experience with it, Kelly, all the Zoom meetings, it was like, okay, I just hop on the link and away you go. So I registered for, obviously I'm a Summit Life member, so that was done. So I watched Life Member Breakfast, got on for the auctions in the evening.
Yep.
Most of the seminars were in the day, so I didn't get a chance to watch those being at work.
Yep.
I know they're coming out, so I'll be able to click on some of the ones we watched. But I thought the, Gray and his staff just did an excellent job just putting that whole thing together. And, the board of WSF, all volunteers again. But I mean, to have that vision and direction to put something like that together. And I think sheep people are usually, obviously, we're fairly adventurous. So, my old adage is fear and common sense. Don't let it stop you. Got it through, but I mean, record numbers for Sheep Week. Like unbelievable what they did on the auctions on all of them. So it's, all the tags either broke records or set new or tied records. So, you can't get that kind of money. And I think, is SCI looking at it going, maybe we should have been a little more proactive about it, but WSF stepped up to the plate, put it in place, and there was some hiccups, but unbelievable job, and they had the right people there speaking, and I think the seminars from what I've seen were really well attended. So great job.
Yeah, I mean, it's not easy to put together a virtual session like that and get the engagement and the interest and kind of maintain it. Not only like just for 2 hours, never mind for a whole week.
Yeah.
So, they did pull that off, and that was pretty impressive. Obviously, I was Garrett and I were talking about it, and having been down to Reno and meeting all those folks, mostly thanks to yourself. But we weren't surprised that they were able to pull that off. But it is a pretty good standard they set. It sounds like it's probably once we get back to being able to do this in person, which obviously there's intangibles that you're not gonna, you have to be in person to experience a lot of that stuff. But for them to be able to run maybe two platforms at the same time would be cool. Like, you come in person, but we also have this if in case you can't make it. It's pretty cool.
I think you're going to see a lot of adaptation from being able to engage if you can't make it and how those programs would set up. So, for instance, the raffles that they had there, I mean, broke all sorts of records. I think it was over $550,000 on the raffles.
Yeah.
So, you start looking at that. So you can get that kind of engagement. Membership jumped. There were over 10,000 members. The membership just went through the roof.
Wow.
You had I think it was over 4,700 registrants for a virtual thing. So 4,700 people paid $50 to register, but you also got the chance to win a sheep hunt.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool, right? I mean, the Life Member Breakfast, it's like it was, a week out, it was only 300 people. And I'm thinking, oh, great. I've got 1 in 300 chance of winning my desert sheep hunt now. And all of a sudden, the numbers went through the roof. I don't know what our final numbers were, but, it's pretty cool. I mean, when you're actually there, we get 900 people to that Life Member Breakfast. So to me, you've got 4,000 or 5,000 Life members. All of them should have registered to get a chance to win that sheep hunt, right? It's pretty cool. But
and I noticed there was a lot more raffle items. Well, not even just raffle items, but just things to win in general. And that was cool to see. I mean, there were a lot of, whether it was less than one club or just being a registrant to the event or the raffle prizes or whatever. Like I felt out, I had like 10 different chances to win some type of sheep hunt, which was pretty cool. I mean, that keeps you coming back every evening too to watch the draws. But it was pretty cool what they're handing out.
Yeah, I was just going to say it had to be up to somewhere around 10. I think I was, just for what I was looking at, for what I was eligible for was like, 3 international hunts and 3 desert sheep hunts. It's like,
yeah, it's pretty awesome.
It's pretty crazy. So, I mean, like I said, great job of just, putting those tantalizers out there to bring people in, and then, obviously the membership buying back in and just generating that kind of cash.
Yeah. The one thing I miss was watching or participating in the backpack race. And we were in the chat room and I saw Adam Foss in there, and I know he's in the Okanagan, and obviously Yankee's in the Okanagan. So I sent a message to Adam Foss there. I said, you know what? Let's get our backpacks and race up and down Knox Mountain. It's a local hill in town here.
Yeah.
He laughed. But I mean, it would be good, obviously, if we could get back to this in person. But that was a pretty good event for sure.
Yeah.
I also like the Wild and Wool movie.
Yeah.
That Adam did with I can't remember the production company there, but
that was
really
excellent.
Yeah.
You know what? That Wild and Wool, like now that you're talking about this, before we even got into like, I started hunting there with my dad as a kid. And Kelly, you can probably remember this too from being kids and growing up where we grew up. Any way you leave our town, you have this chance of seeing sheep. So if you climb up out of the Salmo Crest and there's a herd of sheep there, or if you go west through the Gilpin, through Grand Forks, there's sheep there. And they had that herd on the Wild and Wool. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Actually, Chris, that's probably, I know you explained this probably, I'm trying to remember if it was the first time you're on or not, but can you give a brief kind of overview of Movi and, just for any listeners that don't know much about that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the science is evolving, and coming back to that Wild on Wolf film first, part of it was filmed in BC and a lot of it in the States, and just that positive interaction that's taken place, and that's how we're going to get somewhere with this disease issue. So what we're talking about is Mycoplasma ovi pneumonia, and of course the acronym MOVI is a bacteria that gets in. It's spread from domestic sheep to wild sheep through nose-to-nose contact. There has been some aerosol transmissions, but basically the bacteria goes in, and what it does is it's a setup agent, and it flattens the cilia in the throats of wild sheep, so they can't, if there's anything coming in, like when we cough, the cilia gets coughed. They can't cough that out. They can't cough those back, the other pathogens coming in. So it lets that come in, and it sets it up, and it leads to essentially pneumonia, is what it does. And it's so detrimental to wild sheep populations because they're naive. They haven't been exposed to it before.
Right.
And, depending on, and there's different strains of MFOV, I have to be cautious. I always get shit from Helen from saying this, but I was kind of compare it to COVID in the sense, COVID's a virus, but the similarities to them, they're just, use a PCR for testing. You can use serology to see if you've had it and you've built up an immunity to it. Well, we do the same thing with MOV within our wild populations to see whether they've, first off the contact, what kind of strain it is. And some of those strains are more virulent than others. And you get the wrong strain in, and it can take out 90% of a wild sheep population through transmission.
Yep.
Which leads to, prevention. And, 10 years ago, prevention was separation. We thought double fencing was the answer. And then we did a couple of fencing projects in BC, and those programs, you look at it, you do it. The fellow wants to sell his land. Well, he sells the land. The fence is gone. We don't get any of that money back. It's funded by hunter conservation groups. So to me, fencing became the last opportunity or the last solution to the problem. We needed to be looking beyond those things and start thinking out of the box. So that's kind of where things are starting to progress now. As a vaccine, there's nothing on the landscape coming for wild sheep. There's some trials in BC that are leading edge right now, where we've got 2 producers that were willing to have their sheep tested. And I hope this is the path you wanted to go down, Kelly.
Yeah, for sure.
So 2 producers, one in the Kootenays, one in Region 8. They were willing to have their animals tested. So I guess I'll just back it up a little bit. They were having issues with losing domestic sheep, and they didn't know why they were losing their domestic sheep. So the one lady actually, and this is kind of cool as well, reached out to ag, and it went to ag, and she actually had one of her lambs in a crop seed, and it came back as MOV had killed her lamb, her domestic lamb. And she'd actually lost most of her lamb crop that summer. So any profits that she had lost. And so she reached out to ag. I'm not going to throw ag under the bus yet. But she actually reached out to the Wild Sheep Society of BC because she'd heard of this treatment trial that we were doing in the Kootenays and wanted to know what we could do to help and how would we do it. So here you've got a domestic sheep producer reaching out to a wild sheep NGO to say, what can I do to help this? So first off, we think, okay, what a great opportunity to develop a relationship and a partnership with a producer that's willing to go through this. And if we can help them do that, it also promotes what we're trying to do and say, you know what, it's not that onerous for you to make your flocks MOVI free. So the objective, it's a win-win. Yeah. So the objective of these trials is to, first off, you see the prevalence of MOVI in the herd, treat them with an antibiotic, and then retest a month later. So what we found in these 2 flocks just about cleared the MOV. So I think they're doing another treatment right now. So this is how in its infancy is that we've done this first round of testing and treatment, and went into a second round of treatment and testing. The ultimate goal was to see if we can take a MOVI positive domestic sheep flock and make it MOVI negative. If that works, then you've got a source of MOVI free lambs that you'd be able to actually sell to other producers, 4-H kids, whatever that may be.
Yep.
The thing with the bacteria, you wouldn't be able to use it on every sheep flock, because if it's meat, you can't have the bacteria in the meat. So if it's a meat producing, or you're going to get rid of those ewes for meat, you wouldn't be able to treat them.
Okay.
If you got MOVI positive lambs and you're going to sell them off for meat for slaughter, then there's no point in treating them. You just slaughter them and then they're off the landscape. But ultimately, you want to try and get your flock down to a manageable size and then treat in the fall and then move through that program. So that's what's happening in BC right now. And that's where we're moving in its infancy to get to there. If we can do this, then it's going to have some huge ramifications on the landscape.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. You guys have stepped into that role, like with the more of that, domestic sheep. I know that part of it is always reaching out and building the relationships, but this is a pretty magnified example of that.
It's the only way we're going to get it off the landscape is to have those. And we've run into producers throughout the province that are totally on board with this. And if I could relate another story, there was a producer in Armstrong, so we're not even anywhere near wild sheep range, and we talked to her about how I met this producer was coming back to the fence thing. There's a fellow at OK Falls, had domestic sheep, got a double fence, was going through some issues, had to sell his flock, was selling his property. His property ended up selling with a double fence to a grow up. We didn't get any money back for the fencing that we did on that. He was actually going to take his sheep and put them at the bottom, just down the road from where he lived, at the base of the lambing grounds in OK Falls.
Ooh.
So some wheeling, dealing and went on. I got a call, said we need to move these sheep ASAP. I actually drove from Victoria with the horse trailer with my wife. We loaded up these domestic sheep, and this producer in Armstrong took these domestic sheep. So potentially putting her flock at rest, because we didn't know if they had any other pathogens or, bacteria or whatever they may have had. Put them in. She kind of kept them separated, looked after those sheep. So she took that flock in, and then about 4 or 5 years later, we were doing some initial testing and trying to work with 4-H kids about testing domestic sheep with the nasal swabs and showing 4-H kids how this worked. And her and her husband stepped up again and said, you know what, we'll use our farm. We had the 4-H kids. We did a little presentation. We did a bunch of nasal swabs. And her farm came up. I don't think she may have had one positive animal that she got rid of. And then we did another round of testing and she was MOVI free. So we actually set up a deal where we had a lamb. I'm trying to think how this worked. I think we ended up with some lambs from her. And one of the lambs we sponsored, it ended up coming back. It was a ewe lamb. And we entered into an agreement with him. And she actually raised that lamb, bred that lamb, or that ewe. We had 2 lambs off it last year. Those 2 lambs we donated to 4-H kids. So the contest was, if you write us an essay about why we need to keep domestic sheep separated from wild sheep, and the 2 top essays got a lamb for their 4-H project.
Nice.
So, and this producer's, we pay her to look after this ewe, but this year she's going to have another lamb. We don't know if it's going to be twins or not, but again, we'll do that 4-H thing. So again, trying to promote why we need to have it. We want to educate the next generation.
Exactly. I should mention this too before we end this topic is folks can watch Wild and Wool, the movie. I think you just have to Google it. It's on YouTube. So we'd encourage people to check that out too, because it focuses on a couple areas in the States. Actually, Grand Forks is in the movie as well, up in BC.
Yeah.
So yeah, definitely check that out.
Yeah, there'll be Wild Sheep Society of BC is actually doing one that is Canadian and BC centric. COVID's kind of put our slowdown on it, but
Right.
when this film comes out, it's I'm from what I've seen already and where we're going with it, I think it might be better than Wild and Wool.
Nice.
So just a little tantalizer there.
There you go. Competition,
Hey.
Competition's good.
It's all about spreading the message, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. Hey, on that note, I did send out a bit of a question to Instagram. So I'm just checking my phone here because we're getting a few questions in. And one of them is from Jesse Bone, who is on the Wild Sheep Society of BC, I believe.
He is a director on the Wild Sheep.
There you go. He's a director.
And he's actually the guy making the movie film in BC.
There you go. How's that for a segue? How much money did WSSBC put on the ground last year?
So, great question. $270,000.
Awesome.
That's great.
From a membership that was less than 1,000.
Wow.
Great.
Yeah. And the year before that, I think, was 250,000.
Yeah, the amount of money that's actually going to the ground is, it's a lot. It's
and I'll break that down a little later on, but I'll let you go through the questions, Kelly.
Yeah, I mean that was the main one, and let's look at another one. We've got Dylan. What benefits the Wild Sheep Society BC more, membership or raffle sales? If a person could do only one,
raffle sales. We'd love to have you as a member, only so we can keep in contact with you. But if you want to support us, raffle sales money from our WSR raffles.
Yeah,
we get. We have to pay something to the raffle company, but the majority of that money goes back on the ground. So the majority of what we raise from those raffles goes back on the ground. So if you're feeling that you can contribute only X, and you feel like you're doing something on the ground and conservation for wild sheep, it's through those raffles.
Nice. Well, that answers that question. I'm going to keep an eye on this and see if we get more in. I kind of put it out late. A lot of the other questions seem to be more about the Phillips Blue Buck beer that I posted in the background of that photo. But yeah, I'll loop back to this. One of them was, have you ever seen a blue buck while hunting? I can definitely answer no to that. I don't even see bucks when I'm hunting. But
well, the blue bucks are usually in the eddy.
Yeah, exactly. I guess to build off of Jesse's question, though, with the money that's hit the ground, do you want to get into kind of an overview of some of the key projects? I know there's a lot, and maybe we can't get into all of them, but maybe there's some of the top projects that we can touch on.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one that was funded this year and that makes up the largest percent of that money, and kudos to our members again and Wild Sheep Foundation Alberta. Over $100,000 of that was to the purchase in Grand Forks of 2 property parcels, grasslands for wild sheep, used by mule deer, badgers, bird species. I think it was DL493 and DL492 with 2 parcels side by side. I wish I could remember the total acreage. I think I want to say 80 acres, and the other one was the same size. It started off actually in the spring last year. The outfitter there actually had got in contact with one of our past directors and started this asking questions about what we can do. And he'd stepped up and come up with a huge chunk of the money from a donation that he did. And then we put a call out to our members to donate directly to this land purchase. And then the Wild Sheep Society of BC itself kicked in another $25,000, I think, on top of that. So our members, we did the call to action. Our members came in with like $25,000, $35,000. WSSBC kicked in
nice
$25,000. So we had this $50,000 for the first purchase. And this is in partnership with SILT, so Southern Interior Land Trust. They're the fellows that purchase the land, and they're the ones that are looking after it. And we just help with the purchase. So they actually had been in contact with some of the guys at Wild Sheep Foundation Alberta um, about purchasing another piece of property adjacent to it. So we got in conversations with them again, and we did another call out to members again, and our members stepped up again while Sheepside EBC dumped a bunch of money in. And then we had another anonymous contribution from a fellow in Alberta, and then whatever, I think WSFA Alberta actually did a call to action to their members, explain where it is, protecting sheep habit in BC. And I think they had another, they're going to kill me if I get it wrong, but I want to say it's around 10K coming from their members.
Whoa.
So Alberta members donating to a project in BC. So that's where that huge chunk came from for those two purchases and both those acquisitions protecting sheep habitat.
Awesome.
There you go, in the Gilpin. Geez, I should start running the hounds over there on the Wintern Range.
You need to get rid of some of those cats and some of those bears over
Hey,
there.
then that's what we were talking about, finding out where these animals are wintering at. I mean, it's not too far. Wow, that's a lot. That's great, Chris.
Yeah. And then just in November, I think it was early November, late October, we had a board meeting in Vancouver, and it was actually when COVID was fairly quiet. It was just starting to pick up, but we managed to get together for a meeting, and we approved another $60,000 worth of funding there for projects in BC. Plus, we approved money all year long, so the bulk of the money. So our biggest focus has been on the Fraser River and the Fraser River ecosystem. And that whole sheep habitat, basically from Lillooet to Williams Lake, is one huge meta population of California bighorn sheep. So we started off about 3 years ago. We did the test. Yeah, there's moving on the landscape. We haven't seen land recruitment. Last year, they did a treatment, and they had a control herd and a treatment herd where they actually culled any movie positive sheep that they tested. So they captured over 40 sheep, tested them. Anything that tested positive was euthanized. And then kind of just to see if we get it out of that herd and see what their lamb recruitment would be like. Because again, as movie, if it stays in, so this is the other thing about movie, and I didn't kind of get into it earlier, is once you've had that old age die off, you can have remnant population left. So whatever the number may be, and I'll jump into the chasm in a minute, but whatever those remnant sheep left, there's going to be some that will live, and some can live with it, some will get over it, and then there's some that are left that are shedders. Those shedders will actually pass it on to their lambs. And then the lambs, once they come off the colostrum, the mother's milk, their immune systems aren't up to full capacity, and they will actually get it from that positive of that shedder, get it into lamb, and then your lamb crop, you never get a lamb crop because it just keeps dying off. So to kind of prove this, we've seen stuff in the US where it worked in Idaho. So we kind of followed on what they done, and we did it this year. Chris, there's a whole bunch of people involved that did it. But Chris Proctor, the lead bio up there, and Francis Airedale, they got the whole project together. Helen Swanshaw was involved, the head vet for BC, and like I said, a whole bunch of other people. But we euthanized 11 sheep, I think, out of the 45, and basically we saw lamb recruitment. I think it was around 55%. So hopefully we can get that carryover through the winter. But going into winter, the lamb recruitment was over 55%, which we hadn't seen before. Like that's through the roof, right? So just by removing those movie positive animals had that much of an impact.
Wow.
On that potential herd. So that was last year's project. This year's project, they're going to do the same thing. That whole project, I think, is in the $80,000 range. And again, we funded it, 20, what was that? I think we approved $35K for that. And then we've got partners from Midwest, Wild Sheep Foundation. Usually the Jurassic is a huge contributor to that, but obviously Jurassic didn't go off this year. But we've got all the funding in place to continue that HCTF. Potentially he's got some money going HCTF funded the project last year, so we anticipate that there'll be some funding this year once the approvals come out.
Yep.
So, that's Region 3, and I kind of always work my way through the province, and I think we did this on the last one, except I forgot Region 8 when we did it.
Yeah, the one we were sitting in.
Yeah, exactly. So that was another good chunk of change going into the Fraser stuff. So they're going to treat the most southern herd on the Fraser this year, which is this Ward Creek herd, and do the same thing, test it, anything tests positive. And I think they're going to do it a little different. They're going to tweak it. They're going to save some helicopter time. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention Canadian Wildlife Capture and how much of a supporter they've been. Ben Barakoff. Without Ben's support, donating helicopter time, he donates 25% of helicopter time every time we're doing either a capture or, whatever we're doing on the landscape. So, Ben believes in what we're doing, but unbelievable support from Ben and any of these sheep stuff. So, thanks again, Ben.
That's great.
Yep. That's a pricey component.
Yeah. And we did the same thing in Region 5. So what we're going to do, what we did is when we did the initial setup of putting collars and testing, the collar data is now going to give us the habitat information of where these sheep are, summer, spring range. Where can we best spend our dollars and be target specific with habitat burns, polygons, either for lambing or wintering areas, or however we want to do. So the collar data will now come into use to actually develop the plan. So this wasn't just, a one-off thing. We got Movi here, a bit of collar information, treat them and forget about them. This is a 15-year vision to reestablish that whole Fraser River sheep population back to, 4,500, 5,000 sheep on the landscape instead of 1,500.
Wow.
What is one of those collars worth?
Damn.
They can't be cheap.
They're not. They're GPS, and it depends on your fixed locations and stuff. And I should know what they're worth because we always buy them in bulk. So I know we, not this year, the year before, because we were buying collars for a whole bunch of projects. I think we were I want to say it was 55 to 60 collars, and I want to say we were in that $80,000 range. We bought collars for pretty well every sheep project that was going on at that time.
Oh, that's great. And I was just going to ask you about the burns too. So that's still on the go for 2021, prescribed burns?
It's still a bit of a struggle. So when we actually started doing the Fraser stuff, the first bit was get the data, locations. We had some rough polygons. The color data will back up if we're picking the right polygons. Our outreach first is now to First Nations along the Fraser because it's so heavily, from Lillooet all the way up to Williams Lake. There's First Nations all the way along the Fraser River. So we're in the process of reaching out to First Nations, find out if communities are on board, if they're interested in, a lot of First Nations did burns on the landscape and kind of manage some of that. So our outreach has gone there first to say, this is what we're looking at. Would the community be interested in it? If we would like to proceed. And we want to make sure there's no archaeological sites in there. If there's some stuff that they can guide us around. There's a lot of places. I just had a conversation a few weeks ago about Kamloops Lake, and I'm not going to try and pronounce the names because I'm going to butcher them. But there's some couple of sites there, and it holds some high value ceremonial values along the lake. So we've got to be respectful of those areas to make sure. And if they want us to, if we want to do some habitat work in there, then that's what we're going to do. So that's been our first component. And our hurdle has been with the government to not want to have wildfires on the landscape anymore.
Right.
And First Nations support it. We support it. A lot of fish and game clubs support it. Our approach is going to be that if we can get everybody on saying to the government, this is what people want, this is what your constituents want, you better pay attention to what we're saying here. So, as a community together of all those pieces, if we're all saying the same thing, and, you see it everywhere you go on social media and stuff about conservation, road density, habitat, predators,
Yeah.
the whole ball of wax. If we're all doing it together, then we're going to get somewhere with it. But if we're, you're one off here, and we've had, WSSBC's had some great successes, but we want to now expand that and then bring in as much as we can and bring what we have to offer, and get that on the table. So those habitats burns probably won't be 2021. I'd sure like to see something on the landscape in 2022 if we can on the Fraser.
That's great.
Yeah. And like I said, we want to kind of move up the Fraser. So we want to pick off these sheep herds. So, we're about 80 grand, 90 grand to do each sheep herd, to 16 herds on the Fraser.
Nice. Do you guys move? Will you guys move into the West Kootenays too, like Syringa and Samuel Creston?
Yes. What I'll do is I'll swing back.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Sorry. I'm jumping the gun here. No, I'm getting too excited. Yeah.
We can go to Region 4 because 3 and 4. But I always do it backwards. It's my fault because I always go 3, 5, 6 because I just go up the side of the province. But we can go numerical 3 and 4. And Region 4, we actually had a couple of members reach out to us about the Samuel Creston sheep herd. So Aaron and I apologize, I can't remember the other fellow's name right now. But they brought this concept to us, and I said, we definitely are interested in doing it. Did some outreach, talked to Irene Teskay, the regional bio. She gave me some range use and some collar data that came from the US. So we got some range stuff right away, so it can be really target specific with where we can do some thinning and potential burns. My gut feeling is we'll be able to do some thinning will be beneficial to those sheep more than anything. Predation, vehicle collisions are the biggest detriment. So I think there's like 15 sheep left in that population.
On the Samuel Creston?
On the Samuel Creston. They're not migrating back and forth across the US anymore. So my gut feeling is that little creek canyon bed that goes right there needs to be thinned out. I'm assuming they're getting hammered by predators down there.
Yeah, a friend from work just came back from there, brought his kids up there. There's a couple nice rams in the herd down by the feeder.
Yeah.
I mean, a great way to get your family out and see these things.
Yeah, exactly. So what we're looking at, I mean, obviously there's different arguments around feeding, and I'm not diving into that one. But,
I know. Sorry, I didn't want to go there, but
it's all good. So yeah, there's invasive weeds. So I reached out to the invasive weed lady in Nelson, Emily Chow. So we're starting to look at that. I haven't reached out to highways yet, but we're trying to get some collision death information of what we've seen. Contacted our fellow that does our burns and our forestry plan stuff, John Davies. Sent him the range map. So as soon as he can get out there and just some snow off the landscape, we'll do an assessment. And, it could be a great on the ground project for that Samuel Creston sheep herd later this fall. Hopefully we can get some thinning done out there. So
that's great.
So just trying to improve, the opportunities for that herd. Whether we get to hunt those sheep again, I'm not sure. But, if we can get them back up to 50 animals and, move that feeder off the road a little bit and, reduce that vehicle collision, but still provide a viewing opportunity and education opportunity, and a great opportunity for hunter conservationists to promote what we're doing on the landscape for a population that we're probably never going to hunt. So they can't say we're doing it for a motive. We're doing it because we're passionate about what we do and believe in what we're doing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, exactly.
And then moving over to the East Kootenays, a lot of invasive weeds seems to be the biggest issue. And I think that's going to come to the forefront more and more. We've been working over there. There's the East Kootenay invasive, I'm going to screw it up too. Invasive plant management plan has been developed. And I know they've got a lot of funding applications out. Columbia Basin Trust Fund, HCTF, and the what's the other one? Fish and Wildlife Compensation Program. So I know they've got some approved funding. Wild Sheep Society BC's, we're going to throw some money at that. Basically, what they're doing is treatments on the landscape. And an invasive weed. So before we can even do any burns now, so this is the thing that's going to inhibit burns. It's easy to thin. If you do a burn, potentially you can make the invasive weeds worse by burning because they'll come in before the grasses and they'll take over the landscape. So you're basically doing an assessment on invasive weeds prior to any burn taking place. Now, and if there's invasives, you've got to treat them first before you can think about doing that burn.
Yeah.
I may be way out of. I'm gonna go for this one here, but I would say some of the mines in the East Kootenay they must kick in some money too. Or can you answer that question or no? Especially in around like where I'm probably talking. Yeah.
Yeah. They have got kind of their own programs going on.
Do they coincide with your guys' program? Are you allowed to talk about that or no?
Not yet, and that's one thing. And I'm cautious about how we approach this because obviously Tex wants to take the last chunk of the mountain, which is the last bit of high elevation winter range in the East Kootenays, Castle Mountain.
Yeah,
I believe it's Castle. It's the last big chunk, and that habitat will not be replaced. And that is just actually going through the environmental assessment right now. So coming up, I actually talked to the fellow just at Christmas time. That assessment will be back open for public input. I want to say late March. He's going to reach out to me, and there'll be something on our website once I know when that is. And then we'll be reaching out and say, members, you need to get out there. You need to engage. You need to put have your voice heard to say that this is the last bit of grassland for those wild sheep.
Right.
It's not coming back once it's gone.
Okay. Interesting.
And that's when you want to get your voice heard and say, we don't want to see this go through. And this assessment is the first time they've done it in BC. They've just set it up. They've gone into a new format on this environmental assessment, impact assessment. So great opportunity to say, yay, we don't want this. Yes, we do. No, we don't, whatever. And I've actually got a call next week because Alberta's going the same thing because Jason Kenney's wants to open up coal mines again. Mm-hmm. And those coal mines are going to be on the BC border. So it's going to affect all that sheep range on that southeast corner of the province. So definitely something to be paying attention to there.
Interesting. It's good to hear that Alberta teams up with you guys there too, because I think that the one spot there I always look into Assiniboine and how that herd, I'm not sure if this is true or not, migrates back and forth between Alberta and BC. And you guys are collaborating together to obviously for the cause of sheep in that area too, as well as everywhere else throughout BC.
Yeah, there's great collaboration among the sheep family. From WSF, Alberta, we've had some calls with the Yukon. I've got to initiate some conversations with Washington and Idaho around disease stuff that's going to come up, fairly quickly here. There's another great project going on. Dale and Forsyth from East Kootenay Wildlife Association spearheading one. We funded the calls for it last year, but they're actually putting the calls out this year, and they're doing an assessment on the west side of the valley in the Elk Valley because those sheep numbers have been declining. So they're going to put some stuff out there again. Look at habitat disease. I call it disease assessment and habitat location or habitat assessment as well. So that project should be coming off the ground this spring as well, or this late winter.
Nice.
And then obviously Golden at Kicking Horse with the highway. We bought the collars for that project as well. Golden Rod and Gun Clubs leading that project, and there's going to be some habitat stuff there too. But there's some challenges in there, and that's one where I think Highways hasn't really kicked a bunch of money on it. And I'm thinking if you're going through sheep habitat and the money that Highways have, you guys should be the ones funding the bulk of any habitat enhancement there, as well as putting those wildlife access corridors in.
Definitely. I know you mentioned Idaho. Is there anything you guys deal with Montana too, especially down like in the Phillips Creek?
Not. I've had some conversations. The regional bio down there actually just switched. They've got a new guy in there. He's a great guy. I talked to him on the phone a couple of times now. Because WSF headquarters is in Montana.
Okay.
pretty well got direct access to Kurt Hall, who works with Montana State University, and Kurt's the one that's been working with the wool growers in Montana. So when I was on the board, we traded ideas back and forth and a lot of discussions around that stuff. So pretty well everything that borders BC, we want to be looking at doing cross-border stuff, whether it's Alberta, whether it's Montana, Idaho, Washington, Yukon, Alaska to some extent.
Right.
So really are no borders for sheep. They don't recognize them. They just go back and forth. So why should we?
Yeah, that's great to hear.
Other than when it comes to hunting. Moving on from Region 4, Region 5. Nothing really happening in Region 5 because it's going to be piggybacking off of Region 3. But Region 5, we want to do the same thing as we're doing in Region 3 and look at those herds, get Movie off the landscape, reestablish Churn Creek to what it was, the junction in the park. We've got to work with parks and something in there. The junction herd was a source transplant herd for it's some ridiculous amount of number of transplanted sheep to the U.S. Like if you look at the junction, and it's a great source on the Wild Sheep Foundation website, and it shows a translocation map, and you dip right in and dive right into where the junction herd is, the Chilcoot and the Fraser River, and the arrows coming out of there to the U.S. There's got to be 20 to 30 transplants coming out of the junction that repopulated most of the western states with California bighorn sheep. Yeah. So BC was a source population for a lot of sheep. And I think, that's part of why we see so much support for what we're doing in BC from my U.S. friends as well.
That's great.
Makes sense.
Did we mention the herd up near, the closest place I can think of is the Wilmore Wilderness, but it's in the BC side, just north of it.
Yeah, it's in 719.
Okay, sorry, it's in Region 7. Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm always region specific, so my apologies.
No, that's good. I'm trying to keep up with you here. Yeah.
So moving into Region 6, Bill Jacks, Tahltan First Nations have been doing a study on Jade Boulder and what effects the road have up there and whether the mine does. That project is just coming to conclusion, so there'll be a final report issued out of that. But the beauty about it, that project, they sampled a lot of sheep for a movie, the diseases, what their forage, pellet sampling, that kind of thing. So some great information coming out of there. None of those sheep tested positive for movie, so there's no movie on the landscape in that area with it. That is, and we had no data or information on what, if those sheep have ever been exposed at all to a movie. So fortunately not. But Bill, I was talking to Bill the other day, and I've been bugging him to Bill Jacks. Actually, I should tell you, Bill Jacks is he's the provincial sheep and goat biologist for the province. So something Wild Sheep Society BC had been pushing for a long time. We wanted that representation, and we finally ended up with a provincial sheep and goat biologist. So
perfect.
Bill's been in that position for about a year and a half now, maybe 2 years.
Yep.
And of course, I think it's really going to prove its worth as time continues on and Bill dives into this. And he's so passionate about sheep. So
awesome. We might have to talk to him too.
He'd be a great guest for you guys.
Yeah.
But I was talking to Bill the other day, and I've been bugging about doing. Bill had a really great idea about actually doing some soil analysis because the Cassiars, there's not a lot of timber, there's not a lot of grass, and a burn would be hard to do. And what are the benefits would a burn be? And he suggested, well, maybe we should be looking at fertilizers. I said, what a great idea. So I've been bugging Bill to get these soil samples together, get them analyzed, see what they're missing, and see if we can actually put fertilizer on the landscape to actually encourage the growth of grass and rehabilitate some of the habitat for sheep up there. But when I was talking to Bill actually last week, he's actually just in the infancy, so it looks like we're going to be. He's wants to do a burn in Tottigan on the south slope and some lambing grounds. So that project is just in its infancy as well. So
awesome.
But some habitat work going to be on the ground for some thin-horn sheep in Region 6. Region 7. a quarter of the board is in Region 7, and those guys they're on fire up there with projects. We've got the Williston Dunleavy Disease Health Assessment, Habitat Improvement. We've got collars out on the landscape in there. They're going to be deploying some more collars here either right now or early February. And just getting some more sample size on the 2 sheep herds. So that's the most southern stone sheep herd in the province. Mm-hmm. Josh Hamilton, one of our directors, he's been leading the charge on burns. So we're trying to get burns on the landscape, and we're the closest we've ever been in probably 10 years to actually having fire back on the landscape in the north. So we should be having some burns going on up hopefully this spring and fall. So really excited to see that come to fruition, and a lot of effort, a lot of partnerships, WSSBC guys, North Peace Rod and Gun Club, Wild Sheep Society BC, and some of the government. It's been a battle with government up there for whatever reason, but those guys have done an exceptional job to get us to where we are right now. So hopefully we'll have fire on the landscape there. Looking at some health assessments, more health assessments, some inventory work. And there 719, the bighorn sheep, so the most northern bighorn sheep population in the province. The government actually just did an inventory on that, an assessment on that sheep herd, and it just was concluded, actually, I think just this month. So I haven't seen any data come out of that yet, but going to be pretty exciting to see what comes out of that. And because those sheep do go back and forth between BC and Alberta, just to find out what's going on with that. So some money there, potentially leading to some habitat work as well.
Awesome.
And then heading down into Region 8. Obviously, you guys, Kelly knows about the MOV issue down in Region 8 that killed the land crop between Penticton and kind of OK Falls area down to the U.S. border.
Yep.
When you say OK Falls, is that in like the Castle Mountain area? Is that? Or is
no, Okanagan Falls. That's right.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah,
bad.
sorry.
Yeah.
Basically just south of Penticton, between Penticton and Oliver's. OK Falls is kind of right in the heart of where the Bassaw sheep herd is.
Yeah. Really cool area.
Yeah.
It's like a big canyon through there.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it's spectacular. Yeah, spectacular country. Some tremendous rams in that country right now for California's. So hopefully we don't see that all age die off. We lost our lamb crop to Movi, and I talked to Craig today, and they're just getting ready to gear it up to do a bunch more work, put some science behind what's going on there. From reports that he's been hearing and what I've heard, we're not seeing too much on the landscape, not seeing any coffin sheep. So hopefully some positive signs there that it maybe just been an off event, but it did come from the U.S. side. Those bighorn rams go back and forth, so that's how it got into our lamb crop. All the habitat work that we had, that John had done. So me and John had been working on habitat work in the Okanagan for about 4 or 5 years, and we'd done we'd done some burn plans, we'd done some recce assessments, and what we did is in our first meeting, we sat down and we picked all the sheep habitat in the Okanagan Valley and started looking. I said, we need to do something here, here, and here, and here, and here. And John started working on it. He had all these polygons. And last year, wildfire came to him and said, have you got anything ready to go for burns, thinning projects, all this type of stuff? And John goes, yeah, I've got all of this. And he gave everything that Wild Sheep Society of BC had put together and funded. Gave it to Wildfire, and Wildfire is going to do all the work. So
nice,
awesome.
Probably saved us $1 million.
Perfect.
So the only one we didn't actually get accomplished was McLean Creek, and I've been bugging John, so he's going to try and get that assessment done this spring. But there'll be thinning ongoing. There'll be hopefully some smoke in the air in the valley again, and really enhancing some of those sheep populations. Kelly, I probably know the West Side sheep herd is doing really well right now.
It is, yeah. It's constantly, stopping traffic, because a lot of those sheep get pretty close to the road there, which is probably not a great thing. But every time I drive by there, there's always like 6-8 cars all stacked up in the middle of the road. Because even if you're not familiar with these animals, like they're just, when you see a big, full curl bighorn walking across the road, like it doesn't matter who you are, all the cars just stop and they want to look at them, right? they're just crazy animals, and they're not they're not super common. It's cool to have a spot like that where I could go anytime through the week, and if I hang out on that road for long enough, I'm going to see some nice looking sheep. So we're pretty lucky in that regard. But they seem to be doing really well.
Yeah. They are doing well. And that, when we started looking at that side of the valley, I said to John, we need to actually kind of burn above the road and try and keep those sheep off the road. And that was one of the things, exactly what you're talking
fertilizer about. Up there.
Yeah. But, there's another cool story there too. There was, it's got to be 5 years ago now. There was a fellow that had 3 domestic sheep close to the bottom of Bear Creek. And we approached him, and we came up with a deal, and they wanted to fence his property and do this and that. And I said, well, have you guys talked to this gentleman? And no. So I said, give me his number and let me phone him if you guys are okay with it. So I phoned him up. I was chatting with him. I just said, why do you have your sheep? He says, I just got him to keep the grass down for a fire.
Mm-hmm.
Like, well, really? So I said, well, if we cut your grass, would you get rid of them? He goes, yeah. And
he said, who is this? And you said, this is Sheep Boss.
This is the mafia.
And that's a great success story, because every year he sends me pictures, and this year he sent me 2 or 3 pictures. He had 45 sheep or 35 sheep in his front yard where those domestics were. And there was ewes, there was lambs, all healthy looking sheep. It's
nice.
Such a cool story, right? It's I don't, you wish you could be that successful on all of them, but
yeah. Well, plus he ended up having sheep keeping his grass down anyway, and they're much better to look at than the ones he had.
Yeah. Exactly.
Hey, Chris, I sent a note to Jesse as we were talking. He said just for folks' information, the collars are $1,300 each. Sounds like.
Wow.
Yeah, if you buy the small ones, $1,300, and if we bulk buy, I think we actually got a deal when we bulk bought. We got them down. I think they were under $1,100.
Yeah, not cheap.
No, but a lot of information comes out of them. That's the cool part, right? You get that range usage, how often they're moving, where they're going.
Yeah,
I mean, it's incredible information that we get.
Yeah, I'm thinking about the Southern Interior Mule Deer project as well, that is relying on collars, and the amount of help they need to, get funds to buy those. So yeah, it's a common challenge, I guess. It's just the more people involved, the more you can do stuff like that.
Yeah, and you know what? Kudos to our board for this one. When I presented it to them, the initial expense for the Fraser was $55,000, which is the most we've ever spent on one project.
Mm-hmm.
And the board actually stepped up and approved that funding, and that was purely a collar purchase to start our Fraser River project off 3 years ago.
Cool.
So yeah, so pretty cool. Other stuff going on Region 8. I know Craig's getting some collars out. The west, the east side of the Granby sheep are healthy. They're MOVI negative. The west side, Craig's going to be doing some collars and some work out there. This hopefully he's got time to do it this winter, this February, just to get some samples on the west side.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't had lamb recruitment over there, so our suspicions is that they've got MOVI. Mm-hmm. So moving into that, and I think, and then one thing that was on the radar, and it's in really premature discussions, is just ramping up the Seroptes project that occurred about 2 or 3 years ago and concluded. We didn't end up with something that was tangible to put on the landscape. So had a really quick call with Adam Herring, who led that project, before and said, Adam, are you interested in looking at this again? And we just started the conversation. So again, reaching out First Nations, regional bios, head vet, put the research piece together. What are we looking for? How are we going to do it? And maybe in a couple of years we'll be looking at Seroptes and see what we can do in that. Because basically, so the East side of the valley has got Movi. The west side of the valley, Okanagan Valley, has got Seroptes. And the Seroptes runs from PIB, Penticton Indian Band, lands in Penticton, all the way down to the Ashnolas Crater and across the U.S. border. So again, another cross-border project kind of thing.
And sorry, that's a separate disease?
Yeah, Seroptes is the deer mite. So it's Seroptes ear mites. They get the droopy ear.
Yep.
And they cake up, and the mites do it.
Gotcha.
I don't know. We don't. I think it does. It has the potential to kill them, but it doesn't seem to do it. But they did a study with cougars to see if they were more susceptible to predation because of the ear mites.
Yep.
But yeah, so that's and then I think there's. I did talk to Kaylin from ONA. I think Lower Similkameen Indian Band is actually trying to get a burn off on Crater again, so they're trying to do some habitat work down there again, and we'll be helping out in that again. $5,000 to $10,000 down there. So,
yep.
So really, anywhere there's sheep, once we started generating money, and I think the board's decision was we wanted to have a project in every region that there were sheep, and the last 2-3 years we've managed to accomplish that we've continued, and we've got a sheep project going in every region of the province where there's wild sheep.
That's amazing.
That's cool.
Yeah. Unreal.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how you remember. Well, I think you got a couple notes there, but obviously you're so involved in this that you can roll it off the top of your head. But I mean, we are just amazed at how much is going on in the province. Not to mention all the other, sister organizations and everything else that happens across the continent and otherwise. But yeah, lots of good work. And it's just we've said that before, but the sheep family is so focused, and, most people, they have never harvested a sheep in their life, and they may never. And, folks like yourself, like you have in the past, but, once you get involved in this stuff, you almost don't have time to do any of it. So as far as hunting, so it becomes less about hunting and more about the passion for the actual animal on the landscape. And that's reflected, hands down in the bottom line of how much you guys are putting on the ground. And very few other organizations can say that. So, I think that's always something I take away, whether it's Wild Sheep Foundation or Wild Sheep Society of BC, just the amount of effort and money that's hitting the ground.
Yeah. And that I always remember before I became president for Wild Sheep Society of BC, one of our old presidents, Glenn Coons, who unfortunately passed away, he goes, "We've done enough studies. The money needs to be on the ground to help the sheep." And I kind of carry that, and I've had to find a balance between that, because we have had to go out and find some science and do some studies. But ultimately, these studies are going to lead all into habitat work, which is
exactly
the penultimate example of where we need to be. But
yep.
I'm just going to whip back to that one comment you made, Kelly, about the sheep. I think for some of us, I think even hunting, it's always been about the animal. It's not been about the harvest. And with sheep, it is about the animal and how majestic and what they represent. And I think First Nations have that same perception to sheep as what we do. It's like, you said it when everybody stops to look at them on the highway.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter whether it's the Trans-Canada going through Golden or if it's the west side in Kelowna. Everybody stops to look, and there's such a cool animal. I don't know. I can't explain it myself sometimes, but it's it definitely is a passion for sure.
Yeah. And it's cool to, hear obviously the Indigenous communities, Wild Sheep Society of BC, HGTF, all the organizations coming together, definitely stronger as one. than to kind of come at this at different angles. So I totally agree that that's a big key to moving forward.
Yeah. I guess if I'm going to make a plug too for where we're at, obviously we touched on WSF convention, and I think a lot of chapter and affiliates are now looking at it. I just saw a text today. The Fraternity of Desert Bighorn just canceled their banquet, and I think they're going to go virtual. California is going to be virtual.
Yep.
A lot of people are looking at virtual. We were fortunate last year. We did it. We jumped on it. We did those Facebook auctions, and our members supported through the roof once again. And we actually, for lack of a better word, we didn't miss a beat. We continued on doing what we were doing for Wild Sheep because of that member support. And, coming up, that's exactly kind of what I'm leading into is, our northern convention, for lack of a better word, is coming up. I think we're calling it our Salute to Conservation. But February 6th, the Northern Fellows have put a timed auction. The timed auction is actually up right now, so people can be bidding on items on the timed auction. They got a live auction. They got a live auction coming up on the Saturday, the 6th. They got Kevin Hurley from WSF as a guest speaker. They've got a projects update. Josh is going to do a projects update for Region 7. And this is all going to be online, so there's no charge. You just got to register to bid, and there's some raffles. And February 6th, next Saturday.
Awesome.
That one's hitting the ground, and then our Southern Convention, Salute to Conservation's March 12th, 13th. So we've got a Friday night and then Saturday, and then we're doing seminars. We'll have regional updates from our regional bios, pre-recorded so people can watch those. There'll be some interactive stuff. Another live auction, some raffles, and again, the timed auction stuff. So no, I don't think there's any charge for it from what I understand right now, but you just have to register to get access to the seminars and the stuff. So they've got, I think Nolan Osborne's doing one with Aaron from Gunworks. I think Adam Yonke's doing one with Cam and Adam Foss. So some really cool speakers, and I think Clay Lancaster's doing one on horn aging. These may be subject to change, but this is kind of what we're putting together. So, for people just to be aware out there, get the message that, if you want to become a member, great. Join, come to the conventions, a virtual component on that Saturday and Friday night, and have a great opportunity to have a virtual beer.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks, Chris. Thanks for walking us through all the zones. It's good to hear that things are still, very active, even with all the challenges that we've had globally. And, we have talked a little bit about, like you said, a spring bear hunt and, maybe some other hunts down the line. So we're going to continue chatting with you a little bit about that, and hopefully we can pull something off. And I know that you and Garrett are probably going to be chatting about horses in the background as well, and maybe some hounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I really appreciate it, Chris, you going through all the different regions, especially for our BC listeners and for everybody else who's curious about what's going on in BC here. That's really great. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. It was my pleasure. And I know we didn't step into the hound side too much, but that's
we'll leave that conversation for another time.
Yeah,
we might have to do a whole podcast on hounds.
Oh yeah, they're
exactly.
right here sleeping. So yeah.
I don't think we've had a guest come on. I don't think we've had a 5-timer. I think you and Jesse are probably getting to that point.
Yeah.
And we've always joked that we're going to buy, somebody a jacket or have some type of memento for reaching that milestone with us. But I'll have to see how many times you've been on, Chris.
Yeah.
It's a great milestone, and I appreciate you guys giving me the opportunity to talk to your listeners, because it's you have such a great audience, you guys, and it's one that we never really thought about it, and you guys brought that to us, and it's my hat's off to you guys for putting this together and doing what you're doing, because I think there's such a healthy appetite for it. And I'm the old codger that's been around doing it for a while, but it's, we've got to share our knowledge too, right?
Definitely, and we're willing to soak it up.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, thanks again, Chris, and we'll talk to you again.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Good meeting you, Chris. Thanks for talking.
You too, Garrett. Thank you so much, you guys, and thanks to all the listeners out there. Because, like I said, without those guys, it's like our members. Without our members, we can't get anything done. Without your listeners, you don't have the support either. So, hats off to everybody involved.
Awesome.
That's great. Thank you.
Thanks,
Perfect.
guys.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Good night.
There you go, episode 132 with our good friend Chris Barker. I'm sure you guys dug it, and I hope that listening to this will, influence you guys to become a member of the Wild Sheep Society BC, of the Wild Sheep Foundation, or whatever groups are in your area, wherever you guys are listening from. Like I said in the intro, it's important that we do stuff now so that future generations can enjoy this wildlife the same way we do. And I'm proud to be a member of both of those groups. So anyways, we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. You can always head over to the website, which is theRookieHunter.com. And you are more than welcome to send an email to info@theRookieHunter.com. And you can find the guys on Instagram, Rookie Hunter Podcast. You'll find it. Anyways, we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. Cheers.